You have the raw materials. You're way ahead of most of us. And you're just in the environment here, in the natural beauty, to be able to build on that and how you treat that. And I went for a run this morning along the waterfront. It was great. You know, it was a Chamber of Commerce morning. You know, and I was thinking there were lots of other people out there running and riding bikes too. And you know, people want to be part of that. It's where they want to live. It's the way people say, you know, I want to move there because it's a good place to live. That's the vibrancy you want. You can never take it for granted. You got to work at it every day when you're building your city and when you're connecting the waterfront like you've done, so that this is a trail that I can go across bridges and run for miles on. You need to think about how this region begins to connect itself like that. You know, the best bike trail in America right now is between Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. It's completely off-road, 335 miles. Lots of history, spectacular. Thousands of people are doing that every day. It's the reason people come to Pittsburgh, to ride their bike back all the way to Washington, D.C. It's the kind of vibrancy that you can create. And so what's the connection between Orlando and Tampa? How do you think of that together and that whole region through Lakeland, and of how do you make it a place where people don't sit in traffic saying, why am I here? But they say, well, that was a great ride on a high-speed rail. You know, or they can enjoy the scenery along there. That's part of, you're going to add maybe as many as 1 million new households over the next 20 or 30 years in this region. Tallahassee did an interesting study. And this is about paying for those households, and it's about how you develop. This is in Tallahassee. And Tallahassee is going to add, they expect, about 50,000 households over the next 20 years. And they did this study that if they add that 50,000 households, and they need to build the infrastructure to absorb those households. Now, you know, you multiply this to 1 million households for your region. It will cost them, in the road systems that they will be required to build, almost $9 billion if they build to 1 unit per acre, which is a lot of people's idea of heaven. If they build to 8 units per acre, which is sort of a new urbanist development, and what it is becoming increasingly what I think a lot of people want, it will cost them 1/10 of that in cost for infrastructure. $1 billion a year, on average about $21,000 per household. And if they build to 20 units per acre, which is sort of a mixed-use development of townhouses, some single-family detached and apartments, it will cost $500 million. They're the choices you're going to make about how you use limited resources in this region. And as you meet today and have this discussion about this, this isn't a theoretical. This is about the choices you're making now that will set this region in motion and will impact your taxes that you're paying, the quality of life of whether your children will make a decision to want to live here. You've gone a long way already. I'm aware of One Bay and myregion.com, and you've really tried to begin to get this conversation going, and I think it's so critical that you understand that this is not a theoretical conversation. These decisions don't happen in one big thing, and it's a whole series of incremental decisions over a period of years will determine one day when you wake up 15 or 20 years from now and say, I still love living here. What a great place this is. Or you will say, boy, we really blew it. You're in charge now. It's your choices to make on that. The third area I talked about was education. If you're gonna build on what you have here, you have incredible opportunities. You need an educated workforce. And I noticed in the brochures they handed out to us that the benchmarking talked about this. And if you look right underneath Tampa Bay and Central Florida is Atlanta and the Research Triangle, and you're doing okay in high school educations. I got to say Pittsburgh's doing better. And I want to say why, in part. Because 30 years ago, if you lived in Pittsburgh, we were not in the top 100 local metropolitan areas in the country, with our population having, the percentage of our population having a high school education. We were one of the lowest in the country because you could go to work in a steel mill and get a good job. We made a choice as a community, as the steel mills went down, is that we needed to understand better how to educate ourselves. And so you can see in Pittsburgh, we went from 77% of our population had high school educations to almost 91%. One of the things we did was that if you go to the Pittsburgh public schools and you graduate with a B average, you get a $40,000 scholarship to college. That's financed by the business community of Pittsburgh. UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, made the league gift of $100 million. Why is that? Because the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, as every medical center, needs educated workers. It's not the doctors they need, it's the technicians. And they made an investment in their future because it's hard to move a hospital. That's a commitment that we made as a community, to give every kid a carrot to want to not necessarily go be a PhD, maybe go to community college, but to think about positioning their lives in an economy that's getting turned upside down. The second challenge for you, which you have here, is the raw materials. And the raw materials that is increasingly driving your economy is the research going on in the universities and hospitals here. There's almost $400 billion a year in research spent in the United States. I believe that this is in large part the competitive advantage of America, which is our innovation, our ability to innovate, both in creating new products like the iPhone, but also in improving manufacturing process and other things. We spend in research in the United States, as you can see, far more than any other country in the world. And this becomes an important competitive advantage in helping to shape that. You can see the big blue blob there is the United States. The next biggest one is Japan, and then China. And places all over the country have now recognized that research, the underlying research, is really important to diversify and to drive your economy. And so you might know that Florida in 2006 appropriated $310 million, which they gave to Scripps Research Institute to locate in Jupiter, and they also gave them 170 acres of property to seed a technology effort there. In Louisiana, there's almost $2 billion being spent in a medical research facility that the New Orleans sees as an economic driver. In Las Vegas, the Cleveland Clinic and a brain center, the state spent over $100 million, the city spent over $100 million attracting Cleveland Clinic to Las Vegas, and the colorful mayor of Las Vegas said, you know, this is going to be medical tourism. You can come and gamble and get your brain operated on at the same time. I mention those because it's not sort of where you think as the technology centers of America are. But these places have recognized that technology, the underlying research that goes on in the universities, is in some ways the raw materials of the future, will drive the economies of regions. And you have it here. You have to understand that you need to think about how even more to exploit it. At the University of Central Florida, South Florida, you have significant, over $1 billion of research. You have a technology corridor is very focused on beginning to use this as begun in 1996 really, to begin to see this as a technology driver. One of the best models in the country is the research triangle. And I want to